1995. I was 6 years old. I was young, but I remember my theater experiences. Val was my Batman. Willie was back, and the stakes were higher. There were magic cupboards that brought toys to life. Casper was friendly, but his uncles were not. For a child, 1995 had a lot to offer, and I loved my age-specific titles. But my eyes were wandering. I could see what was being sold to the mature audiences, and I wanted in. Erotic sci-fi, big-budget action films that everyone was talking about. Some worked, some didn't. Comic book films were in their infancy, trying to find footing. Same going for the video game adaptation. A pretty decent start that wouldn't necessarily last. There were plenty of genre options, new subgenres, the early tech-inspired internet-era thriller that featured the lesser-understood World Wide Web. And this bled into another subgenre, now commonly known as Cyberpunk. This is where I want to focus. With the rapid democratization of computers and digital technology, sci-fi films followed the trends. Some tried to get ahead of the technology and could be looked back on and laughed at, but some got very close to the mark. Anytime I put on a VR headset, I'm reminded of Johnny Mnemonic. The internet and the impending new millennium were the MacGuffins of the day, akin to the surge of multiverse movies today. I think one film in particular had its finger on the pulse, incorporating the politics of the early 90s and predicting the future at the same time. And the man most directly responsible? The futurist, whose name is bold at the moment, the self-proclaimed king of the world, James Cameron. And the movie I want to talk about is not one of his directorial efforts. That title belongs to another brilliant Academy Award-winning director, Kathryn Bigelows. And the movie is Strange Days.
I am your main connection to the switchboard of the soul. I'm the magic man.
If it's got something to do with the water, sooner or later it washes up on your beach.
Fan mail from some flounder?
Come on, man, cheer up. Roll's gonna end in 10 minutes anyway.
Strange Days was released on October 13th, 1995. The film was a financial failure. It didn't seem to connect with audiences at the time, and to this day it's little seen, at least considering the talent involved. James Cameron wrote the original story before partnering with Jay Cox to finish the screenplay. Fresh off of Point Break, which established her as one of the contemporary great action filmmakers of the day, Bigelow was tapped to direct. The cast was A-list then, and has only grown in relevance. Ralph Fiennes and Angela Bassett in the lead and supporting roles, each of whom had a banner year in 2022. Fiennes with The Menu and Bassett with a fresh Oscar nomination. Rounding out the cast, Juliette Lewis, who was one of the top leading ladies of the early 90s, Tom Sizemore, who was also on fire, doing Heat the same year, and Michael Wincott, who also had a notable 2022 with Nope. Vincent D'Onofrio, William Fichtner, also in Heat the same year, and Glenn Plummer, who also starred in the infamous Showgirls, also in 95. With a cast like that, it's bizarre that this movie failed to find its footing. And yes, I know it has a following today. I'm part of that club. I'm just saying the club needs to be expanded. The film isn't even necessarily easy to find. I didn't see Strange Days in theaters. In fact, I didn't see Strange Days until after the year 2000. I remember seeing the DVD key art which featured the year 2000 plot point. In a lot of cases, movies about the turn of the century seem to feel extra dated compared to other product of their time films, at least in my opinion. So I figured Strange Days would suffer the same. Wrong. Even though the film takes place in the final moments of 1999, it feels anything but dated. In fact, I like looking at it through the lens of it being an alternate history. I'm not going to break down the plot scene by scene, but I am going to read the first bit of description from Cameron's scriptment. It's available online and it's a fascinating document if film development and production process interests you. So here we go. It's 7 years from now. Things look pretty much the same. The newer cars are smaller, more cab forward, but they look like cars. The people on the streets aren't wearing silver lame jumpsuits. Clothes look like clothes. No radical new styles. The economy is worse. The jobless rate is up. New housing is down. All the indicators are creeping steadily into the red, as they have been for most of our lives. California, the shake and bake state, is still mailing out IOUs and waiting for the big one to make the Barstow into beachfront property. The freeways are a nightmare of gridlock, with smaller cars packed closer and closer together. Gas is over $3 a gallon. Unemployment and inflation are way up. Real estate agents have the highest suicide rate in the country. Pretty bang on. And okay, yeah, dystopian movies are nothing new. Let's look closer at Cameron's futurist label, though. The film is about a squid dealer. Squid.
Superconducting quantum interference device, SQUID.
You'll be able to record what you see, what you experience off your cerebral cortex.
Yeah, he sells pieces of people's lives for others to experience. You want to experience the thrill of robbing a restaurant and being pursued by the police? Maybe not. How about just reliving memories with an ex-lover? Feeling it as if it was really happening. I think most people can relate. Nowadays, we document more with our phones than anyone could have imagined. Well, maybe, save for Cameron. But the film's subplot is the more interesting aspect than the sci-fi gadgetry and concepts. It involves the recording of an assassination of a political gangster rapper named Jericho 1. A prostitute equipped with the SQUID device witnesses the LAPD commit the murder. Now the crooked cops are after her. This comes only a few years after the Rodney King beating and the trial that resulted in the eventual '92 LA riots. This was absolutely on Cameron's mind while writing. An interesting tidbit. The footage of the Rodney King beating was actually shot across the street from the opening of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, in front of the OK Corral. The videographer was actually shooting footage with his camera days earlier of the Terminator 2 production in his neighborhood, trying to get some behind-the-scenes footage. When the footage was turned over to police, it was prologued with the same T2 set footage. If you listen to the James Cameron and Will Wisher T2 commentary, they go into more detail. So yeah, Cameron absolutely had the politics of the very recent past in mind. Also, the gangster rap culture of the moment, the controversy surrounding NWA and other artists, had their own issues with the LAPD. The film is an interesting social commentary document of those days. Even eerier is the death of Tupac and Biggie in the following couple of years. Racial tension, police brutality, and economic collapse. Again, feels very at home today. But let's move away from those themes. They may or may not be a selling point for you to have another viewing. This film is expertly crafted. As mentioned before, Bigelows had proven herself on her past few films. Near Dark, Blue Steel, and Point Break all featured great action set pieces. But I think she entered auteur status with Strange Days. The opening POV robbery sequence is exhilarating, and this was more than a full decade and a half before any GoPro technology. They used a custom helmet camera to achieve these POV sequences. I have to touch on the seeds of Avatar, which are on display. Cameron was originally writing Avatar, or Project 880, right around the time of Strange Days production. The squid tech has parallels to the Avatar program. One scene in particular is almost identical, and my favorite scene at that. Fine's character Lenny gives his paraplegic friend a taste of what it might be like to have the use of his legs. Sound familiar? It's a shame Strange Days didn't make more of a splash, but it makes it an all the more special discovery. If you haven't seen it, jack yourself in and go for a trip.
Have you ever jacked in? Have you ever wired tripped?
You ready?
I revisit Strange Days every New Year's Eve. I think it's Bigelow's opus. And that's all I got. I'm gonna let the flick do the talking. I'm done here. If you enjoyed the trip back to 95 to talk cyberpunk cinema, subscribe to the channel. Or don't. You owe me nothing. I'm just here to talk flicks. Until next time.